Good morning. Today we're going to take a look at weather. It's currently 3:30 in the morning, 4:30 for those of you on daylight savings time. But yeah.
No problem, thank you. Thanks much. Have a great morning. You too. Bluff, go ahead.
Good morning. Boat Bluff is cloudy, 10, calm and rippled.
And McCaffrey, go ahead.
So you might be wondering, how do I know exactly that it's cloudy at this time of day since it's completely dark outside? Well, it's pretty easy when you look up in the sky and you can see the number of stars. We have no light pollution here, so stars are really easy to see. And when you look up in the sky, if you can see a certain amount of stars, whether it's the entire celestial dome or just a small portion, will tell you kind of how much clouds there are in the sky at that time. And you make an estimate on how many clouds there are and report it as cloudy. So there's not really that much to see or do at 3:30. So why don't we reconvene at 6:30 and we'll take a closer look at all the different things that we have to do at a later time. So when we do our weather at 6:30, it's a little more in-depth and we have to take a look at several different factors. We do our local, like what you heard at 6:30, but then we also have a supplemental where we take a closer look at cloud cover and some temperatures, and then we do our climate, which looks at temperatures throughout the day. So what we need to do is we take a little bit of information. First we'll check on what we had for rain, then we'll take a look in our Stevenson screen and get some temperatures. So what we have here is our rain gauge, and it's fairly simple. We just open it, we take a look at how much water is inside, measure it, and then dump out the water and record that amount of rainfall down in our book. So inside our Stevenson screen we have 4 different thermometers that tell us different things. We have a maximum temperature, a minimum temperature, a dry temperature, and a wet temperature. So we go in, we check all of those temperatures, make sure that we get all the information, and then we use that to calculate different things in our tables. Once we've checked all of our temperatures, we then reset the thermometers, and to do that we need to the minimum thermometer we just raise up inside the box, and then the maximum one we need to flick, which resets the temperature inside for the max, and we just make sure that they're all equal and they look good. So we'll go inside, write down our temperatures, and work towards our report. So when we're doing our cloud cover, we have to take a look at the celestial dome, and we take a look at what kind of cloud cover we have. And because we have supplemental weather during this one, we actually have to look at the different layers. And there are several. If you look at the clouds today, what we have, There are several different layers of cloud before you reach the maximum that we have to report at 2,500 feet. So taking a look, we have some cloud cover around 500, some a little bit higher, maybe around 1,800, but we do have some blue skies as well on top, which means we're not overcast. So we rate our numbers down in the book. We have temperature of 1.5, regular, maximum 4.0, minimum 1.0, and 1.0 of rain. And then we take those numbers and we come up with our climate. So our daily maximum 6.5, daily minimum 3.0, and daily rainfall 20.4. Right, so then we calculate our dew point using the temperature, and we have let's see, our dry temperature is 1.5, our wet temperature is 1.1 for a difference of 0.4. And we look on our chart, temperature 1.5 with a difference of 0.4. Our dew point is 1. And we mark these down as whole numbers. So we'll round up for our temperatures. So we have.
Morning lights. I've got an incident going on, so I'll take the lights up early if I may. Green, if you're there, go ahead, your local weather. Good morning, Tom. Green is cloudy, 10 north, 10 estimated with a 2-foot shower. One remark, showers distant, all quads. Number 2. Okay, well, have a great morning. Thank you. Thanks. Both Bluff.
Good morning. Bow Bluff is partly cloudy, 1.5, calm, and rippling.
Thank you, and your son.
1.0 scattered above 2.5. 0.1, 0.0.
55 miles.
6.5, 3.0, 20.4.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. So when you're looking at your weather, you have your 3 parts. And let's go over all 3 different parts in a little bit more detail so that you understand what we are looking at in each one of the different sections and what sort of thing we need to look at when we're reporting our weather. So the first batch that we're going to look at is what we call our local weather. And our local weather is sort of a basic photo of what the weather looks like at a particular time. And this is the weather that we report 3 times a day, every day, 365 days of the year. And this weather is reported by every station. Not every station does the same type of weather. Some do more complicated weather, some do less complicated weather. So the local is for absolutely everybody, for all of the stations. Everyone does the local, and so everyone needs to understand this basic part of a weather report. So let's take a look at our local weather and we'll break it down. The first thing that we look at when it comes to local weather is sky condition, which is pretty much our cloud cover. And there are different things that we can report for cloud cover. We can report clear when there's no cloud. We report partly cloudy from a wisp of cloud to about 50% of the sky is covered in cloud. So that would be partly cloudy. If we have from 50% to just a small little tiny little bit of blue that you could see just peeking through some of the cloud somewhere, that would be cloudy. If you can't see any of the sky anywhere whatsoever, then we would look at overcast. And then we have one more thing that we can report, and that would be obscured. And obscured means essentially that you have a fog bank that's right on top of you, and you can't even see a half mile or a quarter mile or anything. You can't see anything at all. That would be obscured. So the second thing that we take a look at, and this sort of works with clouds, with not clouds, is our distance of visibility. And the furthest that we report for visibility is 15 miles. Now, we are sort of in a little bit of a different situation here at Boat Bluff, because the furthest that we can see over the water in any given direction is only 6 miles. We only have one section off to the southeast that we can see 6 miles. Everything else is 3 miles or less. So even right across the way, we're looking at a half mile. The island that's right in front of us is another half mile. There is a dock that we can see that goes eventually into the town of Klemtu. That's about 2 miles. And then across the Finlandson Channel over on the other side is about 3 miles. So we cannot see up to 15 miles for our visibility, but you can still extrapolate your distances by your cloud cover and taking a look at what your conditions are. And sometimes you can tell whether you can actually see 15 miles or if your visibility is going to be limited due to fog, due to weather, due to anything along those lines. The next thing that we take a look at is our what they call a weather column. And the weather column is sort of what the weather is doing at the moment. And most typical, we would report things like rain, fog, snow. Those are our weather. But we can also report things like drizzle, rain showers, which means it's not raining right now, or maybe it is raining right now, but it's kind of raining on and off. It's not a consistent rain. And then you would report your very, very interesting weather, like tornadoes or water spouts or anything that's more excessive. But those sort of things we don't usually see. What we do see most of the time is rain, fog, and snow. Those are the 3 things that we report sort of more often than anything else. The next column that we take a look at is wind, and this is fairly self-explanatory. You're just looking at the direction and the speed. And here at Boat Bluff, because we are so sheltered by the mountains, we generally don't see a lot more than calm and rippled. And we do occasionally see some winds coming through the channel and they end up coming through here, but it's not very often that we ever see winds over 15 knots. So it is a fairly calm station, which is kind of nice. Occasionally with winds, you would also report things like gusting. If you're getting sort of winds that are steady and then you get a gust that's 5 knots faster than your standard, or you could report squalls if you're experiencing squalls or anything that's kind of unusual wind related. If the wind changes direction, if it's doing southeast and then all of a sudden it sort of turns to northwest, that would be a very significant wind change, and that sort of gets noted as well. When it comes to sea condition, this is something that's very specific to light stations. Most weather reporting that is done at airports or land stations or anything obviously don't require sea condition, but mariners obviously want to know what sea condition is like. And there are many different things that you can report when it comes to sea condition. And the first thing that you sort of take a look at is wave height. And what we have here is, again, we're very sheltered. We're in a channel. It's not very often that you see over rippled, where the waves don't make a lot of waves on the water, but sometimes we do see a little bit more because we have maybe some wind coming through the channel, and we'll see a 1 foot chop or a 2 foot chop. Stations that are more out in open waters will see a much greater range of wave heights. So when you're looking at wave heights, you have a 1 foot chop, 2 foot chop. Then you have 3 foot moderate, 4 foot moderate, 5 foot moderate. I'm going to look that up. After that, you have a 3-foot moderate, 4-foot moderate, 5-foot moderate, and a 6-foot moderate. These are typical conditions that you would see at a more exposed station. And then when you get high winds, you get some really crazy waves, some really big stuff. You would go 7-foot rough, 8-foot rough, 9-foot rough, etc. Anything over and above would be considered rough. So then over and above waves, you have swells, and there is a fairly significant difference between waves and swells. Waves are water conditions that are happening right now because of the wind interacting specifically with the water. Waves usually have a crest, and you can see white water, or like they're more up, down, and so you can kind of tell a wave in that regard. A swell is from when there was winds affecting the surface of the water far away, and because the energy from the wind transfers into the waves and then continues, the energy keeps going in a wave. It doesn't just dissipate because there's no more wind. So sometimes you can get a wave that begins 30 knots or 30 miles away from here, and yet you can still see the wave here. Now, it doesn't happen so much here because we are in a channel and the waves don't travel nearly as far. But when you have a station that's more in open waters, a lot of times you will see swells. And swells don't necessarily go in the same direction as the wind is blowing, because the swells could be coming from somewhere else. A swell will look more like rolling, so up and down, very casual. There's no cresting, there's no peak or anything to a swell. It's just like very gentle rolling swells, and that would be the general difference between a wave and a swell. Now, there is a space after your sea states where you can do remarks. And remarks could be anything that you notice that is a little bit different, a little bit different weather-wise. So, for example, let's say that everything is clear, my visibility is great, but directly to the north, we have a small fog bank that is just hugging the coastline. We would be able to use our remarks to say north, fog, distance maybe 2 miles. So you could use your remarks to report very small, subtle differences in that you don't necessarily include in your full local weather. So once you're finished with your local weather, you then have to look at your supplementary. And supplementary is a little bit more difficult depending on where your station is. We're lucky here at Bluff because we have so many things around us that show different heights. We have an island off to the south that is about 300 feet. We have a ridge that is almost directly in front of us that is measured at 1,300 feet. We have a peak over here that's 1,800 feet, and then we have a large peak sort of just off into the distance that's 2,500 feet. So by using those different peaks, you can sort of judge how high or how tall the different cloud layers are. And clouds generally do form in layers. So you can have different types of clouds in different layers. You'll have low layers, medium layers, high layers, and then your really, really, really high layers, which we don't need to really know too much about because we only report to 2,500 feet. So you report your clouds in your different layers in your different amounts. So if you have very small amount of clouds in a layer, you would report it as few. If you have, say, a little more than few, but not quite 50% of your cloud cover, then you would call it scattered. And then from scattered to almost everything is covered, you would call that broken. And then, of course, anything over and above broken where you can't see anything above that layer, that would be overcast. And it does happen that sometimes you have a very low cloud layer that covers the entire sky, that you can't see anything of your celestial dome, and you would be able to call that at whatever that layer is. So if you have overcast at 1.8, 1.8 being 1,800 feet, then you can't report anything over and above that because you can't see over and above that. Also, part of the supplementary is your temperature and your dew point, and you use the thermometers in your Stevenson screen to calculate your temperatures. So you use the dry bulb, which we took a look at in our Stevenson screen when we did the 630. At the dry bulb is your temperature right now, what the temperature is, no interference, no nothing. And then next to the dry bulb, you have a wet bulb. And this wet bulb is specifically designed that you keep the bulb of the thermometer wet using a little sock, using a little dipper of water, or anything like that. When it gets cold, you would use a specific tiny sock and you freeze it so that it has a little bit of layer of ice on that bottom of the thermometer to give you your wet temperature. And then what you do is you take the dry temperature and the wet temperature and you find what the difference is. Then you go to your tables, and we have our handy sheet of tables, and then you would use your temperature and then your difference, and then it gives you your dew point. And so you would report that as two whole numbers. And today when we did our temperatures, we had our regular temperature of 0.1, meaning that the temperature right now is at about 1 degree, and our dew point is 0.0, which means right at 0 temperature, you would have dew forming on grass or anything that sort of forms dew like regularly. And the last part of our 630 report would be the climate. And the climate is sort of a general overall look of what the temperatures have been doing over the last 24 hours. So we report the high temperature, what the maximum temperature was for the last 24 hours, the low temperature, how cold it went in the last 24 hours, and then we report how much rainfall we had in the last 24 hours at whatever station is reporting your temperature. When we were reporting our 630, we had a high of 6.5, which is still kind of chilly. The other day we had a nice high of 15.0, 15 degrees was kind of nice. And of course in the summers it's going to be even a lot higher than that. And then we had a low of 3.0, meaning it wasn't quite freezing, but it was still pretty cold out in the middle of the night. And you want to dress warmly, obviously. And then we had a 24-hour rainfall of 20.4, which means we had 20.4 millimeters of rain that happened at Bluff in the last 24 hours. So I hope that gives you a little bit more of an insight into weather and what we have to report 7 times in a single day. And this weather gets reported 7 times every day, 365 days a year, which means we actually really don't get a day off. When I have to do weathers at 3:30 in the morning, I have to do weathers at 3:30 in the morning 7 days a week. And that needs to be done as long as I'm at the station, whether I'm here for a week, a month, a year, whatever it is, there's no break. You don't get the days to sleep in or anything along those lines unless you switch with your other keeper and then you make them do the 3:30, and then you don't have to start your weathers until 12:30, meaning that you can sleep in a little bit. And now that you know a little bit more about weather, you can go on to the Canadian weather site and you can actually see what the light stations are reporting every 3 hours. I'll leave a link in the description below to that site, and you can take a look for yourself exactly what the weathers are being reported at that time every day. Those weathers do get updated every 3 hours after we make our reports, and so you can see what kind of weather we're having at the station. You can see what kind of weather I'm having at the station on any given day, whether it's raining, whether it's sunny, whether it's just another day at Bluff. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you found that you learned something, then that's great. Feel free to subscribe so that you can follow along and learn more stuff, what it means to be a modern day lighthouse keeper as I progress putting out videos. Hit that bell notification so you're notified when those videos get uploaded. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you learned something, and we'll see you next time.